In this video, I'm going to discuss calculating the mean or the expected value of a discrete probability distribution. Before we do that, though, we're going to verify that this is a valid probability distribution. There are two criteria that have to be met. Each probability has to be between 0 and 1 inclusive, and the sum of all of the probabilities has to equal 1 or a value very close to 1. Occasionally there'll be rounding errors, and so the sum of all of the probabilities may not be exactly 1, but they should be very close to 1. So first of all, I'm just going to check and look at each probability and make sure that it's between 0 and 1. So each of these, I just walk down and look at them, each of those look fine. And then I'm going to calculate the sum of all the probabilities, and we want to see that value come out to be 1. So I have a label right here. This is just labeling what we're going to be calculating. In order to do the calculation, I hit the equal sign, and that tells Excel that a formula is coming, and I'm going to use a built-in formula called sum because I want to add everything together. So I start typing sum, and you can see it gives me a list of choices, and I click on the one I want, which is sum. And then I'm told it needs the numbers, and so I'm going to select the numbers by clicking on the first value I want, the first probability that I have in my list, and then I'm going to just drag down until I've selected all of the data values that I want, and I'm going to close off the function, and it tells me that the sum is equal to 1. So now we know that we have a valid probability distribution. All the probabilities added up to 1, and each individual probability was between 0 and 1. So to calculate the mean, also known as the expected value of a probability distribution, we're going to follow this formula. So the mean is equal to the sum of, this symbol is the Greek uppercase sigma, means sum. So the sum of each x value times its probability. So before I can add all those things up, I need to calculate each x times its probability. So I'm going to add a new column in here, and I'm going to label it. It's always a good idea to label your data. So I'm labeling this x times p of x, and then in this first cell here, I'm going to, what I want is to multiply this 1 by the 0.267. So I'm going to type the equal sign again, and then that tells Excel there's some kind of formula coming. The formula is going to be, I want this value, and I want to multiply that by this value, x times its probability. So we're telling Excel we want the value of the data in cell A2, which is 1, times the value of the data in cell B2, which is 0.267. And when I hit enter, it tells me that value is 0.267. Now I could repeat that process for each row in my table, but Excel has a very nice feature. If you look at that there's a little square in the corner here. If I grab that and drag it down, it's going to repeat the operation, but for each row. And, I just double check when I look at, for example, this one right here, 2 times 0.336. I can do in my head, see that yes, indeed, the calculation is correct. So now I have all of my x times p of x's, right? All of my values times their probability. And all I have to do now to calculate the mean is to add all of those up. So I'm going to say equals, and again, I want the sum. But now I want the sum of each x value times its probability. And I get the value 2.525. So for this particular probability distribution, the mean value or the expected value is 2.525. And when we look at this data, that makes sense, right? We can see 2 has one of the highest probabilities, 1 is relatively high, and then the probabilities seem to tail off a little bit as the x values get bigger. And so the mean of it is at the value 2.525. Then one other quick thing is there's a neat function in Excel called sum product. And what that function does is it multiplies together all of the arrays or lists that you ask it to, and then at the end adds them all together. So this is just another way in Excel to do this. I could avoid having to actually calculate the x times p of x's by using this function. So if I click here, this is just another way to calculate mean. If I hit equals and then sum, and now I want sum product, so it returns the sum of the products of corresponding ranges or arrays. An array is just a list of numbers, or a list, but in this case a list of numbers. So I have sum product, so I want to do this column is the first list, and I want to multiply it by this column is the second list, and then I want to add all those together. That's what the sum product function does for us, all in one step. And you can see it gives us the same value.